The persistent beep of a heart monitor echoed through the sanitized halls of Los Angeles Grace Memorial Hospital. Renowned cardiothoracic surgeon Dr. Janice Chu stood over the operating table, sweat beading on her forehead as she maneuvered her surgical instruments with precision. She had spent her entire life training for moments like this, where the razor-thin line between life and death could be swayed by the steady skill of her hands. Her final suture complete, she glanced at the clock. 10 hours had passed. 10 hours, standing, meticulously saving her patient's life. She exhaled, relieved that the vital signs on the monitor had stabilized. But just as the tension in her shoulders began to ease, her vision blurred. A sudden pain sliced across her head. Her heart pounded erratically. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. With a strangled gasp, Janice tried to speak, yet darkness swallowed her voice. In the darkness, a swirl of memories and images rushed through her mind. The big city lights of Los Angeles, her childhood in a Chinese-American family, her father's encouragement, and her medical career. She felt as though she were floating above her own body. Through the haze, faint voices reached her. Then, cold clarity. Janice Chu, inner monologue. Where am I? I just finished surgery. Why does my head feel like it's spinning? A coldness snaked along her limbs, and suddenly, Janice realized she was no longer on the sterile floor of an LA hospital. When she forced her eyes open, her hands pressed against what felt like smooth, polished wood. Candlelight flickered on the walls. She sat up in confusion and glanced at herself, and discovered she wore an ornate wedding gown with old-fashioned lace and gold embroidery. Janice Chu, inner monologue. This can't be real. I'm in some kind of historical costume? Am I hallucinating? All around her, people in period clothing cried out in shock. Unknown Maid 1, shouting, "Miss, she's alive! Hurry, someone come! The bride is back from the dead!" Unknown Maid 2, frightened. Is she a ghost? She just woke up all of a sudden. Janice's instincts kicked in. Her medical training told her to calm down and assess her surroundings, but her heart pounded like a drum. The confused chatter spun around her. Dimly, she registered that these strangers kept calling her Miss or Bride. All at once, intense hunger gripped her. After a marathon surgery, it was no wonder she was starving. But how had she ended up in what appeared to be a historical drama set? She forced herself upright on shaky legs. Janice Chu, inner monologue. I was a surgeon, finishing up a critical operation in modern Los Angeles. Now I'm in an ancient wooden chamber wearing a wedding dress. A time travel scenario? That's impossible. Maybe I'm dreaming. She lifted her gaze to see a tall woman, clad in richly embroidered attire, scowling at her from across the room.
Remember this well, disgraceful woman. You are to marry Prince Frank Moore, the so-called living king of hell. You should be grateful we arranged such a marriage at all. If you fail to follow orders, you can forget about ever seeing your child again.
Shards of memory, not her own, crashed into Janice's mind. She saw glimpses of this bride, beaten, belittled, threatened with the life of a small child. Then another woman's face, the stepmother, presumably, and a half-sister sneering. Janice sensed she had somehow merged into the life of this unfortunate bride, forced to marry a prince rumored to be ruthless. Janice Chu, inner monologue. This must be the memory of the body I've inhabited. She was coerced, blackmailed, separated from her child. Now I've replaced her here. So that's the deal. I'm stuck in some bizarre, centuries-old alternate America where a royal family still exists. Terror seized her. Stories about this Prince Frank Moore rattled through her new, inherited memories. A powerful man with a fearsome reputation, rumored to have caused the death of previous brides. The courtyard whispers called him a living king of hell. Night settled over the palace, an estate that exuded the grandeur of an American monarchy in an alternate timeline. Soft lamplight framed long corridors and high-arched ceilings. Servants scurried about, fussing over wedding decorations. Janice's mind raced. Janice Chu, inner monologue. If I really am stuck in the past, or some parallel monarchy version of the U.S., maybe I can still find a way back. Step 1. Gather valuables. If I can't return to modern LA, at least I can survive decently here. She glanced at a small table laden with gold ornaments, jade hairpins, and a finely crafted silver mirror. Quietly, she tucked some into the folds of her wedding gown. She had no idea how the currency worked, but gold was gold. Before she could slip out, a short, vigilant guard stepped from a shadowed alcove. He spoke with a tone of polite suspicion.
Princess Janice, it's so late. Where are you going with these items?
Janice's heart jumped. She recognized he was addressing her with the formal princess, though the wedding had only just begun. Scrambling for an excuse, she forced a bright smile. Janice Chu.
Oh, these? Yes, well, I'm, going for a walk. I hear it's the custom here to bring fitness equipment on a nighttime stroll.
The steward narrowed his eyes.
Fitness equipment?
Janice heard footsteps approaching from behind. The newly inherited memories told her that these personal guards owed strict allegiance to Prince Frank. There was no escape if she couldn't outwit them.
Steward, the bride is indeed restless.
She whirled around and found herself face to face with Prince Frank Moore. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and gave off a calculating aura. Despite his stern demeanor, there was a quiet intensity in his eyes, an intensity that almost unsettled her more than open rage would have.
She wants to run, I see. The new princess thinks she can outsmart me.
Her heart thudded. The rumored living king of hell was even more imposing in person. She recalled that in her modern life, she had commanded entire operating rooms, yet somehow this single man rattled her more than any medical crisis ever had. Despite her protests, Janice was directed to the bridal chamber. Candlelight revealed plush curtains, ornate tapestries, and a bed draped in gold and red. Frank Moore followed close behind, his footsteps predatory.
He must also have been forced into this marriage, I thought. The glimpses from memory suggested neither of us wanted this union. Perhaps I can reason with him, propose a divorce or annulment, as we'd say in modern times.
She gathered her courage and turned to face him.
Prince Frank, you seem as reluctant as I am. Could we skip the formalities and simply part ways? We can, divorce. In modern terms, it's quite simple.
The prince's expression hardened.
In my house, there is no divorce, only widows.
A cold chill slid down her spine at his choice of words. She recalled the horrifying rumors of other brides who died mysteriously soon after marrying him. Janice Chu, alarmed, inner monologue. Is he threatening to kill me if I insist on leaving? At once, she recognized the darkest possibility. He might truly be a murderer. Her pulse raced.
You can't just do that. What gives you the right?
His fingers gripped her wrist, pulling her closer. Heat and intensity rolled off him, but there was suspicion in his gaze as well.
Women from merchant families who marry me usually carry hidden agendas. I'm no fool.
She snapped back, her new persona's boldness taking over.
Well, maybe I do have an agenda. Survival. But that doesn't mean I want to kill you. If anything, let's vow never to see each other again. I want my freedom.
His only response was a mirthless smile. To her further astonishment, Janice suddenly sensed a faint presence outside the chamber. She broke free from Frank's grasp and stepped onto a balcony, determined to climb down and make a break for it. As she reached the railing, she nearly collided with a small figure, a child of maybe 5 or 6 with wide, curious eyes.
Hey, you're the new princess, right? Why are you sneaking around in a wedding dress?
Janice's exasperation melted into a protective concern. She knelt down, scanning the boy's pale face. She noticed a slight bluish tinge around his lips, an indication of potential heart trouble, given her medical background.
Hello there. What's your name?
My name is Nate Moore. They say I'm the prince's son.
Janice felt her heart sink. Her mind pieced it together. The rumors said Prince Frank had a child, one rumored to be frail, nicknamed Nate. She forced a comforting smile.
Oh, so your father is Prince Frank, right?
That's what they tell me. But he's scary, you know. No one who marries him lives long.
He said it so innocently, but a pang of empathy coursed through Janice. She studied him further, suspecting a congenital heart defect. Concern shifted her focus from her own predicament. Suddenly, Nate's expression twisted in pain. He clutched his chest, breathing erratically. Alarmed, Janice recognized the signs of a cardiac event. She pulled the child into her arms.
Nate, hold still. You'll be okay, I promise. Someone help. The young master is in trouble.
Within moments, the halls exploded with chaos. Palace guards rushed in, all uncertain how to help. Medical knowledge flaring, Janice laid him down carefully, checking his pulse. She realized an immediate surgical intervention might be required, but this was a pre-modern environment. Would it even be possible? A pair of guards parted to reveal Prince Frank, his features taut with concern.
What happened, Nate? What's wrong with him?
He's having a severe cardiac episode. He needs urgent surgery. The kind of surgery that doesn't exist in this time, apparently. But I can do it if you let me.
Frank's eyes narrowed, torn between distrust and paternal worry.
You're telling me you can open someone's chest and fix his heart? What nonsense.
She recognized the cynicism in his voice but refused to back down.
I'm a trained cardiothoracic surgeon. You either trust me or watch your son die.
It was a stark ultimatum, but it worked. Frank's posture turned rigid. He motioned for everyone to step back.
Do whatever you must. If you fail, I swear you'll pay with your life.
Janice swallowed, ignoring his threat, focusing on the child. The real problem? She didn't have the necessary modern surgical tools here. Yet, deep inside, she sensed an odd, mystical energy swirling, something that came with her from the moment she awoke in this place. She recalled a fleeting memory. Cursing Frank allowed her to spontaneously summon a single dose of anesthetic. Or was that a delirious dream? With no choice, she pinned her hopes on that bizarre phenomenon. Perhaps it was triggered when she silently cursed Frank for assaulting her personal space. Quietly, she closed her eyes, willing her modern knowledge to the forefront. If there was a way to conjure the medical supplies she needed, she had to try. Janice Chu, inner monologue. Frank Yao. No, Frank Moore. Frank, you jerk. If I had the right anesthesia, I wouldn't let you off easy. A strange warmth flickered in her palm. Slowly, she opened her eyes. In her hand lay a syringe, modern and sleek. She sucked in a sharp breath. She had no time to question how or why this was possible. Nate needed her.
Clear the table. Bring me any clean linens and bowls of boiling water. Now.
Despite their obvious confusion, the guards obeyed, scurrying to prepare an impromptu operating surface. Frank hovered, watching every move like a hawk. Janice sterilized her instruments, magically summoned from her surreal new ability, and began the delicate procedure. Her instincts guided her as if she were back in L.A. Grace Memorial, lights shining bright. Here, though, only flickering lanterns illuminated her path. She repaired the defect in Nate's tiny heart with swift precision, suturing each area with careful, practiced skill. Hours passed. Exhaustion pulled at her, but she pressed on. Finally, she completed the final stitch and exhaled. The tightness in her chest eased as she saw Nate's breathing steady.
He'll be fine now, as long as there's no rejection or infection.
The moment ended when Frank's tense voice broke in.
I never believed you could do something like this, but you did.
Janice sank to the ground, struggling to maintain composure.
It's done. Don't make him too emotional for a while. Let him rest. And if you suspect any complications, call me.
Frank's gaze flickered between Nate's still form and the exhausted woman who saved his son. Something softer appeared in his eyes, just for an instant. News spread rapidly through the Moore royal estate that the new princess had saved young Nate's life with techniques no one understood. Many whispered of sorcery or black magic. Others hailed her as a miracle doctor. Janice herself hardly understood how her strange ability worked, but recognized she must keep it hidden. If it was perceived as dangerous witchcraft, it could earn her a swift execution. Days later, Janice roamed a small courtyard with a tray of fresh herbal tea. She tentatively sipped some, trying to blend her modern knowledge with the herbs available in this ancient-like kingdom. She planned to open a medical tea house, maybe even earn enough to stand on her own feet. Suddenly, she heard the patter of small footsteps. Nate trotted up, still pale but wide-eyed.
Mother,
He paused, shy.
Mother?
everyone calls me a wild child without a mum. But you saved my life, and you're my father's wife. Will you be my mum for real?
Janice's heart clenched. This child had clearly grown up starved for motherly affection. She knelt and ruffled his hair gently.
If that's what you want, Nate, then yes, I'll be your mom.
The boy's eyes lit up. They made an odd but loving picture. A modern surgeon from 21 St. Century LA and a timid boy from an alternate monarchy's princely household. At that moment, a new wave of footsteps approached. Frank Moore stood at the courtyard's edge, masked by pillars. He had overheard Nate's request and Janice's answer. A peculiar warmth flickered in his normally cold eyes. For an instant, he almost smiled.
She's different from any woman I've met, but can I trust her?
He strode forward, posture formal.
Nate's heart condition. Is it truly stable now?
As long as he avoids strenuous activities and follows up, yes. I'll continue to monitor him.
An awkward silence. The tension between them shifted. Less outward hostility, more unspoken questions. In the days that followed, gossip churned among the palace staff. Perhaps the fearsome, living king of hell was not as monstrous as rumored. Perhaps the new princess, with her foreign training, could survive after all. But little did Janice know that beyond the estate walls, swirling political undercurrents threatened to pull her under. Far away, in an opulent mansion, Prince Ben Moore, another branch of the American royal family, schemed with Janice's half-sister, Rose Chu. They plotted to manipulate Janice, exploit her advanced medical knowledge, or ensure she was destroyed, all in service to seizing control of the throne. Janice, though, remained unaware of the storm gathering. For now, her priority was to keep Nate healthy and find a way to continue practicing medicine in this world. She resolved to transform a portion of the estate into a small clinic or tea house, bridging her advanced skills with the herbal traditions around her. Janice Chu, inner monologue. If I can prove my worth to these people, save enough lives, I might earn the freedom to return home, or at least carve out a place of my own here. But in the corridors of the estate, watchers lurked. The scornful eyes of Rose Chu, the ambition of Prince Ben, and the calculating stares of the royal empress all converged, setting into motion a cascade of events that would test Janice's courage, cunning, and heart. A gentle breeze stirred the evening air around the Moore royal estate, carrying the sound of a distant fountain and the whisper of cottonwood trees. Janice Chu, the newly dubbed princess consort, stood alone in a lantern-lit veranda, her thoughts adrift. She gazed into the tranquil water of a decorative pool, seeing her reflection rippling in the lamplight. She had spent several weeks now in this parallel monarchy, a place where the American dream took on the form of castles, princes, and royal politics rather than skyscrapers and stock markets. She hadn't asked for this life, yet it had become inescapably hers. More than that, she had grown to care for these people, especially the quiet, storm-eyed Prince Frank Moore and his gentle child, Nate. And still, uneasy rumors haunted her waking moments. An urgent summons arrived that afternoon, delivered by a palace steward who bowed stiffly in Janice's direction. He had not offered any details, only that the royal council wished to speak with her. That evening, she found herself ushered into a private corridor near the throne room. The richly carved doors swung open, revealing an assembly of figures she was beginning to recognize. Ministers, advisors, and in the center, the imposing presence of Prince Ben Moore, scion to another branch of the royal family. To one side stood Rose Chu, Janice's half-sister in name only, glowering in a jewel-toned gown that drew every eye. Janice knew all too well that Rose was hungry for power, hungry enough to undermine Janice's marriage, or worse.
My esteemed colleagues, we all stand witness to the pressing matter of Prince Frank's succession. The rumor that Frank might be father to a child out of wedlock is unsettling. Likewise, his new princess—
He paused, letting his gaze slide to Janice.
comes from a modest merchant background. We, the council, must ensure the stability of our great monarchy.
Janice bristled. She could sense that Prince Ben deliberately avoided referencing her medical accomplishments, how she had saved little Nate. Instead, he sneered, subtly highlighting her lowly background. But what came next surprised her.
Princess Janice, rumor has it you excel in advanced medicine. Our father, the king, is not getting any younger. His health is delicate. We could use your expertise.
For a flicker of a moment, Janice felt relief. Perhaps Ben was finally showing a cooperative side. Yet his next words made her skin crawl.
Should you agree to join my private medical advisory team, an arrangement that would require you to, shall we say, spend more time in my residence, I would compensate you handsomely. In return, I might overlook the questionable nature of your past.
Janice's heartbeat spiked. This was no mere job offer. It felt like blackmail. Ben wanted her under his thumb, probably to keep her away from Prince Frank. She glanced warily at Rose Chu, who smirked in triumph.
I appreciate the invitation, but I have other commitments. Prince Frank's household needs me.
Are you sure? I can offer a richer environment, a better future.
Janice's jaw clenched, but before she could retort, another voice sliced through the room.
She already has a future with me.
Prince Frank Moore appeared in the threshold, his arrival dramatic enough to startle the counselors. His steady gaze swept the gathering as he moved to stand beside Janice, a protective edge in his posture.
I'm intrigued you'd try to bribe my wife in public, cousin. Seems you're lacking subtlety these days.
The tension in the air solidified, thick enough to taste. Ben's lips pressed together in a thin line.
Ah, Frank, I see you're in good health. Naturally, I meant no offense. I'm merely safeguarding the kingdom's interests.
Funny you mentioned safeguarding. Shall we talk about the local officials you placed in the Southwestern District? The ones rumored to be illegally confiscating farmland from incoming immigrants?
Ben's eyes flashed with anger, but he held his tongue. Gossip said he'd been using harsh measures to seize land near the western border, employing a variety of underhanded tactics. Yet the council remained complicit, or too frightened to challenge him. Standing there, I realized that power struggles in this monarchy could be as tangled and sinister as anything I'd witnessed in modern politics. My presence in Frank's life was more precarious than ever. With no resolution reached, the gathering dispersed into polite chaos. Prince Frank guided Janice out before Ben could hurl any more veiled threats her way. Back in a quieter corridor, Frank turned to Janice, expression grim.
I'm sorry you were cornered like that. Ben's ambitions have grown. My father, the king, doesn't see just how far Ben is willing to go, but I won't let him use you.
Janice saw concern etched into his face and found herself touched. Despite his austere manner, she could sense genuine care beneath his polished exterior.
I'll be fine. I learned how to handle boardroom politics back in Los Angeles, just in a different form.
Frank's eyes flickered at her casual mention of L.A. She had explained some backstory of her being from a far-off land with modern advancements. Though he found it difficult to grasp, he had more or less accepted she carried unique skills.
I've never met a woman like you. Sometimes I feel I must anchor you, or you'll vanish like a dream.
His subtle admission startled her. A warmth spread through her chest. She was about to respond when a small figure sprinted around the corner.
Mother, father, I've been looking everywhere.
Janice crouched to meet him at eye level.
Nate, what's wrong?
There's a rumor in the estate. People say you might leave soon, that you might go to Prince Ben's place. Is that true?
Janice gently tousled the boy's hair.
No, Nate. I'm not going anywhere. I promise.
Relief spread across the boy's face. Frank said nothing, but the tension in his shoulders eased. Over the next week, Janice made frequent trips to her small milk tea and pastry shop, formerly just an idea, now a bustling corner in the capital city, where she combined her knowledge of modern confections with local ingredients. People flocked to it, including some high society folks curious about the princess's famed jade rabbit cakes and reunion tea. One evening, as she closed up the shop, she noticed a cloaked figure hovering near the back door. The silhouette was oddly familiar. Holding her breath, she crept closer until the figure turned. It was Rose Chu, her half-sister. Pale streetlight revealed the bitter twist of Rose's mouth, eyes gleaming with malice.
Your presence is quite a surprise. Didn't think you cared for bubble tea.
Rose let out a humorless laugh.
I'm not here for your sugary drinks. I came to warn you.
Janice's pulse quickened. Rarely did Rose approach with anything that wasn't a threat.
Warn me about what?
Rose's lips curled as if savoring her next words.
You think Prince Frank truly loves you? He's a man with a heavy burden. He's practically guaranteed to inherit the throne. Do you really imagine the monarchy will allow a childless princess from some foreign land to stand at his side? Let alone a woman with questionable background.
Janice stiffened. A memory flashed of the day she found out she might not be able to conceive. Something about an old injury or sabotage from her vicious stepmother. She suspected Rose had a hand in it, but she refused to let that wound show.
That's between me and Frank. You have no right to interfere.
Rose's eyes flicked with triumph.
You're so naive. Prince Ben has countless ways to ruin Frank's credibility. Once Frank is toppled, do you think you can keep that fancy shop? And your life?
The sisters' words were a rattlesnake coil, threatening to strike. Yet Janice forced herself to remain steady.
Let Prince Ben try. I'm not stepping aside.
With that, she turned her back on Rose, ignoring the lancing fear in her chest. Within days, an outbreak of sudden fever swept through a small district near the main city gates. People complained of chills, rashes, and a deep cough. Once word reached the palace, the king ordered immediate quarantine procedures, but the local officials hesitated. They lacked proper medical knowledge and were disorganized, fearful of fueling panic among the public. Janice, determined to help, petitioned Prince Frank for support. Soon they were setting up emergency tents by the city gate, using large stocks of herbs, disinfectants, made from Janice's knowledge of certain modern chemicals, and her newly arrived mystical medical supplies. She relied on that uncanny ability, summoned through intense focus or ironically muttered curses about how she wished she had all the materials from her old hospital. But every time she used that ability, a numbness followed in her fingers. She worried about the cost of bridging centuries with such conjurations, and each day more infected citizens arrived, some in dire condition.
You'll form lines and distribute masks. Anyone with symptoms, take them to the triage area. Keep them separated to prevent further spread.
Among the volunteers was Nate, determined to help pass out the newly invented cloth masks, thanks to Janice's modern knowledge of disease prevention. He gave them cheerfully, though she kept strict watch that he not stay near infected patients. Suddenly a messenger rushed in. Messenger urgent. Princess Janice, a band of unknown raiders stormed the medical supply convoy from the west. We lost a huge portion of the pharmaceuticals. Janice's heart sank. Without those supplies, she couldn't control the outbreak. This felt orchestrated, like someone aimed to sabotage her efforts and watch the city descend into crisis.
This has to be Ben's doing, or someone who wants Frank to fail.
She turned to see Prince Frank approach, having overheard. He spoke just loud enough for her to catch, a dark glint in his eyes.
I won't let them destroy our efforts. If they think they can starve us of medicine and spark chaos, they underestimate us.
Janice's gaze locked with his.
Then let's fight back. We'll set up more local supply networks, collect alternative herbs, do everything we can. I won't watch these people suffer.
Despite the tension, she saw in Frank's face that same unwavering determination to protect innocent lives. That night, while Janice remained in the emergency camp to oversee patients, Prince Frank left with a small retinue of personal guards. She didn't know his plan, but she sensed it involved confronting some shadowy players controlling the illegal raiders. Just past midnight, she was checking on a feverish child when a figure in black slipped through the tent flap. Janice jolted in alarm. The intruder's features were obscured by a mask, but the flicker of lamplight revealed a pair of cunning eyes.
Who are you? This area is off limits to non-medical staff. Leave at once.
The intruder quietly produced a small blade and advanced. Fear tightened Janice's throat. She realized they intended to silence her, and it wouldn't take a genius to guess who orchestrated this. She braced herself, hoping to dodge, but the figure lunged. Yet from the corner of her vision, a flash of movement. A tall, athletic woman with dark braided hair tackled the intruder. The blade clattered to the ground. Quick as lightning, the newcomer twisted the masked assassin's wrist, forcing them to drop a small vial of suspicious liquid. The intruder hissed, pulling free, and fled into the night. Panting, Janice turned to her rescuer. She recognized her as an African-American traveler who had shown up as a volunteer nurse just the day before. Her name, if Janice recalled, was Alyssa Carter, a woman who had recently come from the southwestern region, outraged by the local officials' corruption.
Alyssa, that was incredible. How did you—
Alyssa Carter gave a slight shrug, eyes still on the tent flap where the assailant vanished.
I saw a stranger skulking around and figured something was off. Are you all right?
Janice nodded, her heart still pounding.
I owe you a big thank you, and a better explanation of who might want me dead. But for now, let's contain that vial. It might be poison meant for the patients.
They carefully retrieved the vial, labeling it as evidence. Outside, the flap of the tent still swung in the cold breeze, as if mocking them with the near miss. 2 days later, Prince Frank returned in the pre-dawn hours, cloak torn, a bruise shadowing his jaw. He had uncovered the root of the stolen medical supplies, intercepting the raiders and reclaiming a large portion. Word spread like wildfire. Prince Frank had personally fought in the skirmish, risking his life. The show of bravery and compassion turned him into a hero figure among the capital's citizens. Exhausted and bloodied, Frank headed straight for the emergency camp. Janice, on duty with her stethoscope, a conjured item from her mysterious ability, rushed to meet him.
You're hurt. Sit down. Let me examine you.
He tried to brush off her concern, but she insisted, pressing gently on the bruises along his ribs, checking for fractures.
You've probably got a cracked rib. Why do you keep putting yourself in danger?
He gave a wry smile.
I promised these people we'd restore the medicine. My word means nothing if I can't uphold it.
Tenderness laced her voice as she set about treating him.
You're too stubborn for your own good. Let me at least bandage you.
He reached out, fingers grazing hers, his expression softening.
Thank you for caring. I've never had that before.
For a moment, the world around them quieted. Despite the half-collapsed tents and lines of coughing patients, they shared a silent understanding. Something deeper than duty bound them together now. Meanwhile, behind the grand walls of the Moore royal estate, Prince Ben received a private visitor, eyes glittering with impatience. Rose Chu arrived, wearing a guarded expression.
You requested my presence, Your Highness?
I did. You've proven useful in the past, Rose. Now I need another favor, but be aware, if you fail me, the consequences will be severe.
Her lips tightened. Though she hated taking orders, she needed Prince Ben's protection.
Tell me what you want.
I want Frank discredited. I want the king to doubt his ability to rule, and I want that foreign upstart, Janice, exposed for whatever secrets she hides. The crown should be mine.
Rose's eyes gleamed with a certain satisfaction.
And if I succeed?
Prince Ben's smirk was humorless.
You'll enjoy the wealth, the favor, the status you crave, and your half-sister will be out of the picture.
Quiet fell over them, though their shared ambitions sizzled like electricity. Their plan set in motion, they each anticipated the final blow. Back at the emergency camp, the outbreak gradually waned under Janice's careful management. The city stabilized. People hailed Prince Frank as a heroic figure. Janice's medical knowledge became revered. Some called her a miracle worker. Others still eyed her with superstition. But she was too tired to dwell on rumors. One evening, after her final round of patient checks, Janice collapsed into a chair at the small workstation. Nate approached, bearing a steaming cup of ginger tea.
Mother, you need rest. Even I can see you're exhausted.
She couldn't help smiling at his concern. Thank you, sweetie. He sipped his own little cup, then looked up solemnly.
You'll stay with Father and me forever, right? People say you might not be able to give him more children, that the monarchy might force you away.
Janice froze. So the gossip had reached even Nate's ears. She carefully placed her hand over his.
I don't know what the future holds, Nate, but I promise, as long as I'm here, I'll protect you.
He clung to her waist, quiet tears in his eyes. Janice's heart clenched. She realized how powerless a child could feel in this swirl of political games and uncertain alliances. Over the next few days, tension only grew. Rumors flew about the king's failing health. Whispers claimed Prince Ben had bribed certain council members, planning a grand move to usurp the line of succession. And in the background, the Empress remained eerily silent, as if waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Janice Chu, inner monologue. Even if Frank is unstoppable on the battlefield, he's at a disadvantage when it comes to palace intrigue. I need to stay vigilant. For him, for Nate, and maybe for the entire kingdom. Late one night, Janice was organizing medical records in her shop's back room, scribbled notes on parchment, listing each plague patient's progress. She had tried to replicate modern hospital charts, making them more systematic. Suddenly, she felt that familiar, unsettling swirl deep inside, the same sensation that allowed her to conjure medical tools from the future. Her vision dimmed, her pulse raced. A flash of bright, white-capped hospital corridors overcame her senses. She heard the beep of advanced monitors, smelled antiseptic and latex gloves. She saw her own reflection in an LA hospital window, wearing a doctor's coat embroidered with Dr. Janice Chu, Maryland. In the reflection behind her, a face appeared. Frank Moore, clad not in modern attire but in regal clothes, standing in that slick corridor, eyes intense. Then the vision shattered. She stumbled back, panting. Her hand clasped a brand-new stethoscope that had materialized from nowhere.
What was that? Was it a memory of the modern world, or some merging of these two lives?
She had no answer, only the startling realization that something bigger bound her destiny here. Maybe it was fate, or a cosmic glitch. But ignoring it would not bring her any closer to home, if she even had a home to return to anymore. On the other side of the city, under the flickering glow of clandestine torches, Prince Ben convened with a group of masked men. Rose Chu lingered in the shadows, arms crossed. A slender figure came forward, a man with a shifting gaze, evidently uneasy. Masked man, quavering. "Your Highness, we've tried everything to undermine the princess's cures and the prince's popularity, but she's cunning, always one step ahead." Prince Ben's jaw tightened.
I'm tired of half measures. I want results. Disrupt their supply lines, spread new rumors, sabotage that silly tea shop, anything that undermines her credibility, and if possible, ensure Frank is implicated in something so scandalous the king will have no choice but to disown him.
This time, let's not leave any survivors who can contradict our story. If Janice dies, Frank loses the only advantage that might secure him the throne.
The masked man swallowed hard, nodding. They scattered into the night with instructions to sow turmoil. Unbeknownst to them, a silent figure, face hidden, crouched on a neighboring rooftop, overhearing every word. Morning dawned with a rare, peaceful hush over the city. Janice was just stepping away from the apothecary corner of the camp when Alyssa Carter emerged, face etched with worry.
Princess Janice, there's someone outside the gate, demanding to see you. He says he has news of your long-lost child.
A shock coursed through Janice. Long-lost child? Memories of her stepmother's cruelty, rumors that Janice had borne a baby before marriage. These were half-remembered illusions she'd gleaned from the body's original consciousness. Her heart hammered.
But that baby was... I was told he died, buried in the cold mountains. It was all orchestrated by...
She stopped, words failing. If the child still lived, the ramifications were tremendous.
He insists you come alone or he won't speak. Seems worried about an ambush.
Fear warred with hope in Janice's mind. Could it be a trap set by Ben's forces? Possibly. Yet if there was even a tiny chance this child, the child the original Janice had lost, was alive.
I have to see him.
A short while later, Janice followed Alyssa's directions, riding a discreet carriage beyond the outer district. She arrived at a secluded hillside dotted with cedar trees. The air felt thick with tension. The sun hung low, gilding the horizon in pale orange. She dismounted and scanned the surroundings. A lone figure stood near the cliff's edge, cloaked in gray. She approached slowly, uncertain.
You wish to see me? You claim knowledge of my child?
The figure turned, a young man with sorrowful eyes. He stepped forward, pressing a small cloth token into her hand. Janice's breath caught. Embroidered on the cloth was a half-faded family symbol she recognized from her father's merchant lineage. Young man, hoarsely. Your child. He was taken by a traveling caravan, raised in secrecy, the stepmother who cast him away. She believed him dead, but he lived. Janice's eyes stung with sudden tears. Could it be true? She found her chest tightening, memory swirling.
Where is he now?
The young man's voice broke. He's in Prince Ben's custody, forced to serve as a pawn. The boy doesn't even know who his birth mother is. They plan to... Before he could finish, a shout rang out from behind the trees. Armed riders burst into view, led by a sneering Rose Chew.
Such a touching reunion, but we can't have you knowing these secrets, sister.
Janice instinctively shielded the young man. A swirl of dread seized her. She realized Rose must have followed them, maybe even orchestrated the meeting to corner her.
Grab them both, and if the princess resists, kill her.
Swords glinted. Janice tried to keep her voice steady.
Rose, you've stooped even lower than I imagined. That child, he's your nephew.
Nephew or not, it's politics now. He's a bargaining chip in Ben's quest for the throne. As for you, dear sister, your death will ensure Frank's downfall.
4 riders advanced. Janice braced herself, scanning for an escape. The cliff's drop loomed to her right. Could she scramble away? She doubted she'd outrun horses. Voice, roaring command. Halt! To her profound relief, Janice spotted a small squad of palace guards break through the clearing. Leading them was Prince Frank Moore, regal coat billowing in the wind, determined rage etched on his face.
If anyone lays a hand on the princess, I'll cut them down.
Chaos erupted. The guards clashed with Rose's riders. Hooves thundered, metal clashed on metal. Janice ducked to avoid a swinging blade. She glimpsed Frank engaged in fierce combat, forcing 2 riders back with swift sword strikes. Rose Chew, realigning her men, gestured to surround Frank. Meanwhile, the young man who brought Janice the cloth token staggered from a blow to the shoulder.
Seize Frank. Ben wants him alive, for now.
Janice's heart lurched. She had no weapon, only her wits. Her frantic gaze found a fallen spear near a guard who'd been knocked down. She dashed, scooped it up with trembling hands, and hurled it at a rider about to strike Frank from behind. The spear caught the attacker's arm, forcing him to drop his sword. Frank seized the opening, pivoting to face another adversary. He glimpsed Janice's throw and nodded with fierce gratitude. Suddenly, Rose's eyes narrowed on Janice. She urged her horse forward, drawing a concealed dagger.
You'll regret crossing me, sister.
Before she could strike, an arrow whistled out of nowhere. It grazed the horse's flank, causing it to rear violently. Rose was thrown from the saddle. She landed hard, the dagger skittering away. By then, the palace guards had the upper hand, subduing the riders. Panting, Janice rushed toward the pinned Rose, heart hammering.
Where is the child? Where is Janice's son?
Rose spat, refusing to answer. But one of her subdued riders coughed out a fear-ridden confession. Subdued rider, terrified. He's being kept near Prince Ben's southern estate. They plan to use him to blackmail the princess, maybe even King Moore. Please, spare my life. Frank's jaw tightened. He looked at Janice, a wave of compassion crossing his features.
Janice, we'll get him back. I promise.
Despite her earlier confusion, whether or not the child was truly hers, he believed her. And that belief lent her new strength. With Rose's defeat, some truths had come to light, but others remained shrouded in shadow. Prince Frank called for loyal guards to confine Rose while urgent messages were sent to the king, demanding an investigation into Prince Ben's alleged crimes. Janice knelt by the wounded messenger who had risked everything to bring her the cloth token. She pressed a gauze pad, summoned from her modern supplies, against his bleeding shoulder.
Stay still. You'll be all right.
The young man peered up at her, tears of relief brimming in his eyes. I'm so sorry. They threatened me, said they'd kill me if I told you about your son, but I couldn't live with the guilt. Janice squeezed his hand, swallowing the swirl of fear and fierce determination.
Thank you. You've done more than you know.
Prince Frank joined them, his voice quiet.
We need to leave now, before Ben's men regroup. I'll have my best soldiers search the southern estate. We'll find your child.
She exhaled, pressing a hand to her racing heart.
Frank, I don't even know what to say. Just promise you won't do anything reckless. Ben is dangerous. He's armed with resources we don't fully understand.
He nodded, but his expression told her he wouldn't hesitate to risk his life for her, for the boy, for everything that kept her bound to this uncertain monarchy. As the sun dropped beyond the horizon, painting the sky in crimson and gold, they set off for the palace with captured riders in tow, Rose Chu under guard, and the looming threat of Prince Ben cast like a dark cloud over their future. Janice Chu, inner monologue. I came here to escape my old destiny, or so I thought. But it seems my path is far more entangled than a single abrupt crossing in time. Now, with a lost child, an impending war for the throne, and an unspoken bond with Frank that grows stronger each day. Perhaps I've found a purpose greater than anything I knew in modern Los Angeles. Her mind flicked back to the baby she never met, her original self's child. If he truly lived, saving him might bring closure to the tragic chapters that haunted her new life. She silently vowed she would see it through, no matter the risk. Yet in the private halls of the monarchy, an even greater conspiracy prepared to unveil. The king's health hung in a delicate balance. Enemies lurked in every corridor. If Prince Frank failed, if Janice's medical miracles faltered, the entire kingdom could fall prey to Prince Ben's ambition, or the meddling empress's secrets. Uncertainty pulsed through the capital like an undercurrent, gathering strength. The climax was near, and Janice felt it beating in the hush of every corridor, the hush that preceded a storm. Janice Chu confronts power-hungry schemes, rescues a mysterious messenger claiming news of her lost child, and squares off against her malicious half-sister, Rose Chu. The threat of Prince Ben grows as the throne teeters on the edge of upheaval. With new revelations, Janice's possible child, Frank's unwavering protection, and allies like Alyssa Carter, our heroine stands at the precipice of a royal storm. The question remains, can Janice truly save both the monarchy and the precious bonds she's forged in this Americanized kingdom? If you enjoyed this story, check out another video with an even more amazing tale. There's always something exciting waiting for you on our channel. And don't forget, more wonderful stories are coming soon. Hit the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of our upcoming adventures.